party was my mother's idea. 40 people in our backyard, fairy lights strung between the oak trees, a cake that said, "Happy 18th," Brook and gold fondant, because Sandra Mercer did not do anything small when there was an audience. I stood there in a sundress, smiling at neighbors and my dad's business contacts, holding a glass of lemonade I hadn't touched, thinking about one thing. 7 more hours. That's how long until my uncle's paperwork became worthless. He just didn't know it yet. Here's what nobody at that party understood. What I look like on the outside, polite, grateful, a little quiet, and what I was on the inside were 2 completely different things. I was 18. I had a signed legal document in my jacket pocket, and I had spent 4 months learning exactly what my family planned to do the moment I crossed into adulthood. They thought turning 18 made me vulnerable. They had it exactly backwards. To tell this right, I have to go back 7 years, summer in rural East Texas. My grandfather, Calvin Reed, had land 60 miles outside of Tyler, 12 acres of post oak and red clay, a creek that ran fast in March and slowed to nothing by August, and a farmhouse he'd been patching since before my mother was born. It wasn't pretty. Siding needed paint. A porch column had a crack wrapped in hardware wire that Grandpa Calvin called good enough for another decade. The kitchen floor dipped so the table rocked unless you wedged a matchbook under the short leg. But when I walked through that screen door in July, something in my chest always settled. You want to learn something real today? That's how every Saturday started with him. Not how was school, not what do you want to be, something real, something with weight. That summer, real meant patching fence, where deer kept breaking through, knowing which trees to clear and which to leave because their roots held the creek bank. Sitting on his tailgate at day's end with a mason jar of water, listening to him talk about land the way some men talk about God. Land doesn't care about your intentions, he told me once. It only cares what you do. I was 11. I filed it away. He was already building something I didn't know I'd need. Back home in Plano, our house was comfortable and hollow in the ways that mattered. New countertops. My brother Dylan had a gaming setup that cost more than my entire wardrobe. My parents, Tom in commercial development, Sandra in residential staging, understood the price of everything and the value of almost nothing that couldn't go on a spreadsheet. Grandpa Calvin's land came up at dinner sometimes, always the same way. Tom would bring up property taxes, what acreage was fetching in that county, whether the mineral rights had been assessed. Sandra would say it's just sitting there. Dylan would ask to be excused. I would eat and say nothing. I just knew the way my dad talked about those 12 acres made my stomach tight. The land wasn't sitting there. It was where I knew how to do things. Grandpa Calvin died the winter I was 15. Lung cancer, fast. I sat by his bed in November and held his hand. Still a working man's hand. Rough, wide-palmed, knuckles stained with grease that never quite came clean. Don't let them sell it. Not to my mother. To me. I told him I wouldn't. He squeezed once and closed his eyes. At the reception, I watched my dad and his brother Ricky standing apart from everyone, Ricky's phone out, showing Tom something on the screen. 2 words reached me clearly. Mineral rights. I was 15, no money, no legal standing, no power. But I remembered, and I started paying attention. Have you ever made a promise you knew would cost you? Tell me in the comments. And if you're not subscribed, stay. Because what happens next is exactly what they never saw coming. Margaret Calloway did not look like someone who saved people. She looked like someone's favorite aunt. Silver hair, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a coffee mug on her desk that said, "World's okayest lawyer" in faded print. Her office was small, 1 window, filing cabinets that didn't quite close all the way. But the folder she slid across the desk to me that Saturday morning in February changed everything. "Your grandfather came to me 6 years ago," she said. "He was very specific about what he wanted and very specific about why." She opened the folder. Calvin Reed had set up an irrevocable trust before his first diagnosis. The 12 acres, the farmhouse, a savings account, and a small investment portfolio. All of it transferred out of his personal name and into the trust while he was still healthy, still sharp, still absolutely certain of what his sons would do the moment he was gone. Total value, just under $1.4 million. I felt the room shift under me. "You are the sole beneficiary," Margaret said. "Your father and uncle have no legal claim. The property never entered your grandfather's estate. It bypassed probate entirely." She let that land. The title to the land was recorded under the trust at the county recorder's office the same year he set it up. Your father doesn't know that. He's been assuming he's an heir to something that was never his to inherit. I stared at my name on the second line of the document. Why didn't Grandpa tell anyone? Margaret took her glasses off, set them on the desk. His exact words were, "Your sons will sell that land before the dirt settles on my grave." The office was very quiet. I drove home in a fog, not scared, not relieved, something in between that doesn't have a clean name. That Sunday, Uncle Ricky came for dinner, which he'd been doing more and more lately, every other week, always with some folder or his laptop open to real estate listings, always with that easy grin that meant he was about to ask for something. After dinner, he and Tom disappeared into the garage. I cleared the table. I moved slowly. The garage door was cracked open 2 inches. Ricky's voice. I already made contact with the buyer, Hargrove Mineral Group. They're ready to move fast. Cash offer, 60 days close. But they need clean title, Tom. We have to file the quitclaim before Brooke turns 18. Tom. She won't fight it. Ricky. She's 17. What's she gonna do? A pause. Tom. And if she does? Ricky, without missing a beat. We give her 20 grand and call it a college fund. She'll think that's generous. I set a dish down on the counter. Quietly, carefully, $20,000 out of a $1.4 million estate. That's what they thought I was worth. I went upstairs and texted Margaret 2 words. They're moving. Her reply came in under 3 minutes. I expected that. Come Saturday. We'll get you ready. I put my phone face down on my pillow. In the next room, my brother Dylan was watching something loud on his monitor. Downstairs, my parents were laughing at something on TV. Normal sounds, normal night. Somewhere across town, my uncle was already drafting paperwork on land he didn't own. And I was 17 years, 341 days old. 24 days left. 3 days before my birthday, Ricky showed up at the house unannounced. Not to the front door, to the driveway, leaning against his truck in a flannel jacket, hands in his pockets like a man who just happened to be passing through. Ricky was a real estate broker. Nothing he did was accidental. Hey kid, got a minute? We sat on the front steps, late afternoon, a neighbor's dog barking somewhere down the block. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice dropped low, like we were sharing something private. That land out in Tyler, you know what it's sitting on? I waited. Mineral rights, Brooke. The kind that don't come around twice. I've got a buyer. Serious money. Serious people. Fast close. And I want to make sure you're taken care of in the deal. What does taken care of mean? 20,000 cash for college? I let the number sit between us in the air. 20,000 out of what total, Uncle Ricky? The grin flickered, just for a second. Then it came back, slightly adjusted. You're 17. 20 grand is a lot of money at 17. Whose name is on the deed? Your grandfather's. But he's gone, Brooke. Passes to your dad and me as next to kin. That's just how inheritance works. He said it with such casual certainty. The way people talk when they've rehearsed the answer so many times, it stopped feeling like a lie. I'll think about it, I said. He stood up, brushed off his jeans, pointed at me like we'd just made a deal. Don't think too long! Buyers move on! He pulled out of the driveway. Before he hit the end of the street, his phone was already at his ear. I watched him go. Then I went inside and said nothing. The night before my birthday, I drove out to the land alone. 60 miles of highway, then 20 minutes of county road, then the gravel turnoff Grandpa Calvin had laid himself, crushed limestone over red clay, packed down by decades of his truck tires. I parked where he always parked, walked to the porch, sat in the chair with the loose armrest he never got around to fixing. The creek was running, a half moon, post oaks standing black against the sky. I opened my laptop. Margaret had sent the full document package, the acceptance of successor beneficiary form, the trust summary, the beneficiary confirmation, everything tabbed, everything ready. I read each page twice. Then I closed the laptop and listened to the water. Grandpa Calvin used to sit in this exact chair and say, "Patience isn't weakness. It's just timing people can't see." I always thought he was talking about deer season. He wasn't. The tears came without warning, not loud, just a quiet leak I didn't bother stopping. I cried because I wish my dad had been the kind of man who drove out here on weekends just to sit. I cried because my mother never once asked me what I wanted, only what was practical. I cried because I was about to sign a legal document at midnight to protect myself from the people who were supposed to protect me first. Then I wiped my face, opened the laptop, and at exactly 12 a.m. I signed, Grandpa Calvin's land, my name on the line, 24 days of waiting, over in 30 seconds. Margaret was the first person through the door when the county recorder's office opened. Gray blazer, leather folder, flat shoes built for walking fast. She approached the counter and placed 2 documents face up on the surface. A certified copy of the Calvin Reed Irrevocable Trust and Ellis Pendon's Notice, which is a public filing that says, there is a legal interest pending on this property and nothing can move until it's resolved. The clerk reviewed the chain of title, stamped both documents, recorded. That was 8:09 a.m. At 8:14, Margaret called me. I was eating cereal at the kitchen table. My dad was upstairs getting dressed. My mom was running the coffee maker. It's done, Margaret said. Whatever they bring in will be rejected. I rinsed my bowl, dried it, put it away. At 8:30, Tom came downstairs in his business shirt, the button-down he used to wear to bank meetings before the company started bleeding out. Ricky was right behind him, folder under his arm, moving with the energy of a man who thinks the hardest part is the drive. We'll be back by lunch, Tom said, grabbing his keys. I looked up from the counter. Good luck, I said. He paused in the doorway. Something crossed his face. Not suspicion, just the faint discomfort of a word that didn't land right. Then he walked out. I'll never know exactly what their faces look like at the counter. But Margaret stayed at the recorder's office on purpose. She told me everything later, word for word. Ricky slid the quit claim deed across with a confident nod. Tom stood behind him, hands in his pockets, already thinking about lunch. The clerk typed the parcel number, read the screen, typed again, then stopped. I can't record this document, sir. Ricky leaned in. Excuse me. The title on this property is held under the Calvin Reed Irrevocable Trust, recorded in 2019. There's also Ellis Pendon's filed this morning. That's not possible. Our father owned that land. Sir, the deed transferred to the trust 6 years ago. The chain of title is clear. This quit claim doesn't match the current ownership record. Tom stepped up beside Ricky. There was no trust. Our father never mentioned any trust. The clerk looked between them. The trustee listed on the filing is a Margaret Calloway. I'd recommend you contact her directly. Ricky's hand went flat on the counter because Margaret's name, the name on the business card they'd found in my bag 2 weeks earlier, was now stamped into a public record they couldn't touch. My phone rang at 9:22 a.m. I was on the porch, a neighbor's sprinkler arcing back and forth across the lawn. Tom's voice was tight and stripped of everything except the kind of anger that comes from humiliation. What did you do? Not a question, a statement. I accepted what Grandpa left me. You went behind our backs with some lawyer we've never even heard of. Margaret has been the trust attorney for 6 years, Dad. You just never asked. Silence, heavy breathing, traffic noise behind him. He was still in the parking lot. I'm your father, I know. Then act like it. I kept a promise. To the man who actually showed up. The line went dead. I set the phone on the porch railing. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from the specific grief of saying a true thing to your father and watching it mean nothing. The sprinkler kept going. The world kept moving. Across town, Ricky was already on the phone with a lawyer because the buyer, Hargrove Mineral Group, had a penalty clause in the purchase contract. $45,000 if he couldn't deliver clean title. He'd signed that agreement 2 months ago, before he'd checked a single public record. He'd bet everything on a dead man's land and never once thought to look at who actually owned it. The consequences came in fast, the way they always do when a lie finally meets the thing it was built on. Hargrove Mineral Group filed a civil suit against Ricky within the week. Breach of contract, misrepresentation of title. The penalty clause alone was $45,000, plus damages and legal fees on top. Their attorney sent the complaint certified mail. Ricky signed for it on a Thursday morning. Then the county recorder's office referred the quitclaim deed to the district attorney. Because the notary's stamp on Ricky's document didn't match any registered notary in the county, he hadn't hired a notary. He'd found a stamp. That's not a paperwork mistake. That's forgery, which in this state is a felony. His real estate license was suspended pending investigation, which meant his income, already thin, stopped. Word moves fast in a small town. Court filings are public record. Hargrove Mineral Group's lawsuit named the Tyler parcel by number. People read, people talked. By the second week, the story had made its way through the neighborhood, the school parking lot, the gas station on Route 9. Tom called me once during that stretch. His voice was different, not angry anymore, just flat, used up. I might lose the house. Brooke, the business is gone. That land was supposed to be the way out. I know you're struggling, Dad. Then help us. The land was never your way out. It was Grandpa's gift to me. A gift? You're 18. What does an 18-year-old need with 12 acres in East Texas? It's not about what I need, it's about what he wanted. Long pause. I'll contest the trust. I'd left Margaret on a silent open line before he called. Her voice came through the speaker, calm and precise. Mr. Reed, contesting an irrevocable trust established 6 years before the grantor's death, with full legal capacity documented and witnessed, will cost more in legal fees than the land is worth. I'd strongly advise against it. Tom didn't say another word. He just hung up. 3 weeks later, I drove out to the land. County road, gravel turnoff, the post oak still holding the creek bank the way Grandpa taught me to recognize. I unlocked the farmhouse with the key he gave me when I was 14. In case you ever need to get in when we're not here. I understand now he meant permanently. In the desk drawer by the front window, I found the envelope Margaret told me would be there. My name on the front in his handwriting. 1 page, blue ink, his letters getting looser toward the bottom the way they did when he was tired. He said he always knew his sons would try to sell the land. He didn't blame them. They were built for a different kind of thinking. But he'd watched me press my thumb into a fence post to check for rot. He'd watched me ask whether the roof needed patching before I ever asked what the place was worth. That's why he chose me. The last line said, "Take care of it. It took care of you first." I didn't call my parents that Sunday, or the Sunday after. My mother sent a text in October that said we should talk. I read it. I didn't reply. My dad sent one in November. I'm sorry for how things went. I read that one too. Some apologies come too late to be medicine. They're just information. Proof that a person finally understands what they did, now that it cost them something. I enrolled in environmental science that fall. Declared a minor in land management. The campus was 40 minutes from the farmhouse. I listed the farmhouse address on my enrollment forms. Under permanent residence, for the first time, it felt like the truest thing I'd ever written down. Grandpa Calvin left me $58,000 in a separate educational fund that had been quietly accruing interest for 6 years, the same number my uncle had offered as a bribe. My grandfather had already set it aside, without telling anyone, without making it a negotiation. That's the difference between someone who loves you and someone who's managing you. I know which one I had, and I know which ones I didn't. So here's where I leave you, and I want real answers in the comments. My dad said sorry. My mom said we should talk. I said nothing. And I have 0 regrets, but I know half of you think I should have given them another chance. That family is family no matter what. And the other half think I didn't go far enough. So tell me, when someone shows you exactly who they are under pressure, is that who they really are? Or does everyone deserve the chance to be different? I genuinely want to see this comment section go to war. Drop your take. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, because the next story is already waiting, and it starts the same way all the real ones do, with someone underestimating the wrong person.